I could walk to my room and slam my door. I could call a friend and have them come pick me up so I can just get out of this environment. Or I could yell at my mom, right? Which is less extreme than punching her in the face, but more extreme than just going and slamming your door.
Tara, thank you so much for joining us here on the Science of Psychotherapy podcast. It's so great to see you.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And Richard here. So lovely to see you in person after our email communications. And just as a quick one, Tara, here you are joining us on the podcast. And we were saying just before, people sort of wonder, how do you get on podcasts? Well, you send us an email. And
yes.
We looked at you because we said, wow, she's really interesting. And we want to talk to you. So if anybody out there who thinks of it, send it. I guess we can always say no. But we're very open. But I really loved both looking at your work and your engagement, and you do a lot of online sort of thing as well that you talk about. But I was particularly drawn to the title of your book. You've got it there, Too Much, Not Enough, which is great. And then there's a qualifier. Yeah, actually, can you fill us in just a little bit about yourself? We've given you a little bio before, but a little bit about yourself, what interests you, and what brought you into writing this sort of book. And I know you work with young kids, teenagers. Just really interested in you.
Wonderful. Well, absolutely. I fell into doing the practice of psychology after a job change. I was moving into running a company that was a little nonprofit that worked with residential treatment kiddos. And that company ended up faltering and failing. And so I was kind of standing there with my doctorate going, well, what else can I do? And then it dawned on me, well, Tara, you can do therapy. That's a thing. And as I got started doing therapy in 2016, I started chronicling kind of my journey a little bit with the types of clients that I was seeing and the types of issues that were coming up. And then just even my own process of what I was learning about myself doing therapy with other people. And in 2019, on January 1st, setting my intention for the year, I said, this is a year I'm going to write a book. I think from a young child, I had always wanted to write a book. And I wrote little book reports and lots of little like mini novelettes, growing up. And I said, well, in 2019, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to write this book. And so I started writing it every morning, creating this little journey for myself. And when it came to titling, I had wanted to title it, I Need a Syllabus for This Part of My Life, which I still may find a way to make that a book of mine at some point. But what I was really resonating with was the journey from graduate school through becoming kind of a grown adult, and what it meant to go through this process, and why we don't have some sort of a guide for what happens after you get done with school. And as I had my readers go through and read the book for me before I launched it, they said, I love the idea of that title, but that's not actually what your book's about. Your book is not about that journey. Your book is about this element of who we are as people and living intentionally, and finding the space in between that feeling of there's too much going on all the time, and I can never be enough to make all of that happen. And once one of the readers said that, and I wrote it down, it just kind of landed and hit home of that is what it feels like a lot of time, of there's too much happening in the world, or I'm doing too much, or there's, too much that I need to be responsible for. I can't possibly be enough to handle all those things, or how come there isn't a grown-up around to handle all those things for me? Where am I in this process? And then the act of living intentionally, instead of this constant vacillation between those two, the act of living intentionally brings peace to not have to feel like you are, running amok all the time or laying in bed and can't function.
Yeah, it does seem like the overwhelm of everything that is going on in the world, it tends to create chaos in our minds, doesn't it? So if you intentionally plan, to live, intentionally, that tends to overcome the overwhelm.
Yeah, it keeps you very present and in what we are needing to actively attend to right now, instead of focusing on that future stuff or that past stuff. We kind of move away from all that to stay present.
Dr. John Arden told us just recently, he writes books to organize his thoughts and, and intentionally learn. So I'm wondering, in your journey of writing the book, what was there any transformational things that happened to you?
Absolutely. I gave up a lot of my shoulds during that writing. It was incredible to get to the end and feel like I'm a very different person now. I don't do some of the things that I used to do as I was kind of walking through some of those processes and journaling it out.
Actually, it was this thing of the word, I was just thinking, intention. So that self-directed, self-guided. I mean, we've got a whole part of the brain that's towards self-direction, but mostly what we do is we try to do external satisfaction. And so I just wrote, shift from intention away from out tension, which is cool. A new book. But I wrote a book called How the Real World's Driving Us Crazy. And it was talking about this externalized evaluation framework and how we actually develop a mindset which evaluates gives ourselves value based on outside. I call it the winner-loser world. But then, of course, that becomes embedded in culture. That becomes embedded in our ways and in the education program. And then, as you say, the journey from education to expressing that education. It's this constant battle of am I being satisfied with, am I being accepted? Am I good enough? And of course, the question is always good enough for what? But the trouble is it's a two-edged sword. One is, we come over concerned with the outside world. And the other one is actually the outside world kind of does decide a lot of things, what we do. Yeah. This juxtaposition, that's a lot of what you seem to be working with in your thoughts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like a lot of people do come into therapy wanting, for lack of a better term, kind of a surface level answer to make everything okay. And when we get down into some of the deeper levels, we realize that there is a core element of not feeling like they can even survive this world in some sense, like that they don't have the tools or that they don't have the internal ability to make it and to manage. And I think that element stems from a lot of different messaging from childhood. I think it stems from a lot of different of how they comprehended something, even if the message wasn't directly mean or bad or whatever, how they turned it, how they understood it in their being is wildly different and can make a huge difference in how they reflect on things as a grown person.
So when you talk about internal choices, do we have have you built like a catalog, or are there, so the top 10 kind of internal choices that people should be making?
Ooh, I don't know that I would look at it that way. I think that I have a couple of rules that I tell people that are really effective to help them live more intentionally. Sure. And I think I put them out as kind of my weighing test on decision making. And so it's, can you do it non-judgmentally, fully present, and on purpose? And if you can do whatever it is that you're deciding to do in that way, then go for it. You are living very intentionally. If at any point you decide like, nope, I actually don't like that I'm doing this, or this doesn't feel good or right or whatever, then you can stop and kind of start all over to make the decision again. We're never really stuck with the decisions that we make outside of like really big things like once you have murdered somebody, you can't take that back. But other things, most other things, you can decide to stop at any point in time. And one of the areas that I see that being really effective is with folks who are struggling with like compulsive overeating or binging, is that they get into this kind of mindset of, I need to finish this, or, they stop being intentional in those moments and they stop thinking about what they're actually doing. And so we teach the method of stopping at the point where you do notice that you're doing it again, when you're putting that next thing in your mouth, of saying like, wait a second, is this next bite really what I'm deciding to do in this moment? Am I doing it non-judgmentally both now and in 20 minutes when I think about this? Can I still be non-judgmental about this decision? Can I do it on purpose right now? This is for a purpose. Like, I want to eat this right now. and in a way that like you are fully present. I use the example in my book a lot of eating French fries from McDonald's. I will absolutely order a large French fry from McDonald's, but really the first few handfuls are really the best tasting. And then the rest of it, I just eat because they're there, right? There's such a difference between those first few yummy tastes and then the rest of the container. So really I should just order a small because those are the only bites I'm really going to enjoy. I'm going to be fully present for. Right?
Yeah. Especially if you're eating and driving and you're totally unconscious of finishing the rest of the fries.
Yes.
Well, I'm getting kind of excited by these words because I'm just looking there, and the first time I've thought about it, on purpose. On purpose. If you're making your decisions on your purpose, and of course, purpose is directly related to meaning. And meaning is subcortical as well as cortical. And I go back to the old thing of the elephant and the rider. You know, we say, well, I can't. It's very hard to do this just willfully to break habits. But if you do it on purpose, your purpose is actually part of the elephant. So that's really cool. But to be on purpose. That thing to be present. Now that's a really interesting thing of self-awareness, is it? Or what are the sort of things that allow us to get that sense of being present?
When I think about being present, I think about being like an active participant in this moment. I'm not just letting things happen to me. I'm not letting things pass me by. I am fully engaged, sight, senses in that thing.
Yeah, this is something that needs to be nurtured and practiced, right?
Yeah.
Because most of our life is, habitual. We're on autopilot most of the time. And so how do we learn to be present? Because it seems like it's not a normal state for most people.
It's so true. Because this is just bouncing. This is so great, Tara, bouncing up so many fascinating things in my past thoughts. Joseph Campbell, the great mythologist, he talked about living your bliss and various things of self-awareness. I suppose he's talking there, and he came up with the concept that life is all about participating in the experience. And I thought, that's cool, but not quite right. And I thought, oh dear, are you supposed to tell people like Joseph Campbell they're not quite right? But then I argued with Plato as well, so it didn't matter. but I played around with it for a while, and Matt and I are both creative artists as well, musicians and actors and performers, which is really helpful. And I changed it to creatively participate in the experience. Ooh. And you can't be creative. I mean, creative is an engaged process. It requires you and something else, other people, other things. And that presence, if you're not present, you can't be with anything else. And you do a lot of work with teenage kids. This is one of their greatest, talk about the win or loser world. I mean, they're externally evaluated all the time. How do you bring all this work in? Certainly you're talking to adults in the book, but with kids as well.
Yeah, I love teaching the skills to teens because my first thought is, if I can teach you this at 13 and you can practice it for the rest of your life, what an amazing life you're going to lead. Like, you are just not going to have the kind of struggles and worries and things that a lot of us have just kept because we didn't have these tools and we didn't practice them, right? So I do teach them a lot, and we do a lot of things that I think the best way that I can think of them is just being authentic. I think teens know when you're faking, and teens know when you're talking down to them. And so I really do practice doing some of those things authentically with them. So I do a lot of like crafting in session with kids for the purpose of purposely making mistakes and having to wrestle with whether or not to go back and undo a whole work that you did and then have to redo it to get the perfect way, or to allow it to be a mistake and be a part of what happened in our space today. I do a lot of opportunity where they can explore what they are feeling in the moment based on other things. So like, we watch some movies in our sessions, ones that I know make me cry, so that I'm actively crying in the session with them and having them look at me and be like, wait, so wait, that was sad for you. Tell me about what that feels like, and have them engage in the process with me as I unpack why I cry at Encanto. Because there are so many parts of that you feel like, oh my gosh, I see that. So I love doing it that way. And then we do a lot of experiential stuff with food in my sessions. So I don't know when the last time you guys had a warhead was, or if you guys even have warheads where you are.
Yes.
Yeah, they are so super sour candy that like even talking about them, like I feel my jaw tightening up at the back. And we explore just the difference of being, eating for eating's sake and eating for the purpose of feeling this difference that our body does naturally to a stimulus, right? Something was given to us, we put it in our mouth, and then our body started doing a thing. And that happens all over the place with anxiety and with depression and with being afraid of things or whatever it is, and giving them kind of these tangible sources when they have a situation that comes up where they get mad at their mom because she did something. I can look at them and be like, okay, let's break down the situation. Where was the warhead in that? Where was the thing that like made your body physiologically react? And then you leaned into that feeling to do these things. What could have been some other options? And how can we notice that warhead earlier so that you're not punching holes in the wall and getting into more trouble from a situation that we could have handled differently?
Oh, that's so cool. I want to come to one of your sessions. They sound like real fun sessions.
I think they're great.
do you have a is there sort of a case example that we could discuss?
Oh, the first one that came to my mind was a kiddo that I saw. I saw him for almost 2 years. And during the first 2 years, we talked a lot about his nail biting and his anxiety. And we did a lot of, normal behavioral activation kind of stuff to try and like lessen those pieces. But the thought that really came to my mind was, as we had done some of this work to help him identify his emotions and help him become more present and do those pieces, he kept trying to, I kept trying to tell him, you're doing better, you don't need to come as often. And he kept telling me like, no, I'm not, I need to keep coming. And I kept trying to figure out like, what's going on here? How did this happen? And one week he finally did come in and almost immediately sat down on the couch and started bawling. And I looked at him and said, what is happening today? Where did this come from? What was this trigger point? And he had said that somebody at school had bullied him. And it was the first time he felt like he was ready to tell me that he had been suicidal for the last like 3 months.
Wow. Okay.
And even though in session, every time I ask all of the questions about suicidality, have you thought of that this week? What's on a level of 1 to 10? Where are you at? Because I always gauge for suicidality. I feel like therapists' office are one place out of the whole world where we should be asking that question every time. But that's my other soapbox. But I had been asking him and he just hadn't felt ready. And to them that day, because he'd gotten bullied, kind of layers got removed where he was able to really identify this piece. And that was the whole reason he wasn't willing to shorten our sessions or come in less, was because he was kind of working himself up to being able to tell me what was really going on with him. And we had an opportunity to really understand his presence and his purpose in sitting in our sessions, and really start pulling away those blocks of, why he didn't tell me sooner. And a lot of it really had to came back to that idea of, I don't want to change how Dr. Sanderson sees me. And I'm worried that, if I do well enough, then I'll have kind of fooled the world and done the right thing, gotten my A+ in therapy, but not have actually done what I needed to do, because I'm not enough. I can't handle this or function in this way. So we did a lot more work inside of those components and helped him through that. But that element of, really being real with teens and sticking it out for as long as you need to, and being present, it's wildly important.
And how beautiful that you were sensitive enough not to, when you thought he was finished, not to finish.
It's something we include in our book, a whole area of what I'm calling client responsiveness. There's been a lot of responsive talk for quite a while, but not a lot do it. We tend to be more methodological and helping a great deal. And it was beautiful. That was just a great example of, okay, I'll put this forward. But when the client comes back, because I wonder how many therapists would have gone, oh yes, I know you might need, and just insisted on their, not so much their authority. I know it comes from great care, but it is extraordinary what clients will tell you. And we're doing some PhD work on it at the moment, hopefully to give it more realization of just how many people are using responsiveness like this. And you're just a great example, because you did that not out of academic or college education. You did that out of heart.
Yeah.
And which seems to be a real big motivation in a lot of what you do.
I think as I get to know different people, whether they're other clinicians or people I'm consulting with, one of the key elements they feel from me is what I would call generosity. This idea of there aren't any bounds to what I am willing to give or do. I want to help in whatever way I can, and that people do respond in that way. I think even that kiddo looked at me when I said, "Of course we can keep meeting. That's fine. I don't have any agenda here. This isn't my stuff that I'm trying to navigate here. If you've got more stuff to say in whatever capacity you want to, or in whatever time frame you do, I'm here." And I think that response welcomes people to feel comfortable and safe and ready to get what they need.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, another thought that as you were talking about working with teens, and I'm sure this is for everybody in our world of Instagram and social media, we're very practiced at being inauthentic. We portray an image of ourselves in social media, which isn't necessarily, authentically us. And so in being very practiced at being inauthentic in that sort of way, even if it's very subtle, are we making it, are we a generation or generations that are now finding it more difficult to come back to live an authentic life? What are your observations?
Yeah, I think that there are some interesting trends going on even inside of our social media. I just was introduced to an app the other day that is a social media app, but doesn't allow any filters, that everything is immediately, authentically you in that moment. In fact, it was a mother and daughter set of clients of mine who use it together. And so when you message the other person, it gives you 15 seconds to take a picture either of yourself or of your environment to send back to the other person. And it's supposed to be this kind of real moment in time kind of experience. You don't have time to make sure the shot's right or do anything fun. It's just either you or where you're at. Let's be real. And I think that we got caught up in the facade of it all. And instead of that being oh, here's a fun filter to play with, it became, this is my real life. Instead of it being, this is an example of something that I did or a final cut of something where I'm saying it's the final cut of it. It became, no, this was really me doing it in this moment. And it became a very lying kind of feel, or just inauthentic kind of feel. But I think that the industry is shifting a little bit. I think that we've caught on, and we're recognizing that we're smarter and saying that's not real. Let's take another look at that. Or even how many accounts there are now that test out different things to say, so-and-so said that they could put this in the oven for 30 minutes and get this product. Let's see if that's real, and even try some of those pieces just to kind of give themselves a chance to say, we can fact check these things. We can make sure. Yeah. And I do think that will help us online. What I think is going to help us in person, though, is really challenging ourselves to be okay with the kind of messy parts of us being human.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that real world driving us crazy. It's there are an unfortunate embedding of benefit that does come from being of a particular look, of a particular type. We see in different countries in different degrees of the color of your skin, all these sorts of problems. And I think the worst part, well, it's kind of two-edged sword. The internet does seem to level that field, not in the sense of a good way, because it's a bad way. It levels it so that everybody is then vulnerable or susceptible. How do you manage working with kids and adults too, who are struggling with understanding this medium?
Oh, I think that one of the biggest things I tell people, and it seems so simple and easy, but it's don't look at all of the stuff on there all the time. Get off of those things and be in real life. Engage with your friends and family in real life as much as that's appropriate with all of the confines of illness and stuff in the world. But like, be with the people in real time, in real space, and not watch these little blurbs from things. I even say the same thing about the news, though, of like, limit your daily news intake. Like there's too much out there that you don't need to be worrying about and thinking about or challenging yourself about. Pick your things that are valuable to you that you want to advocate for or make sure you're invested in and growing your knowledge about, but then leave the rest of it, because you cannot manage everything that's happening in every other country all across the world right now. Like, you have plenty of your own stuff in your own world, and focus in on being intentional about this space and time.
Yeah.
It's also the amount of speculation too, I think, has invaded particularly the 24-hour news cycle. And it's very dangerous.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there is just so much information coming at us. If we just sit passively, it all just comes at us rather than us seeking out the information that, we need to enhance our own lives. So it is a big problem, and it's a big overwhelm. And I totally agree. We have to limit our amount of time online, watching the news and looking at social media, and find a quiet place and read a book. Gosh.
Yeah.
Now, Tara, I just want to get back to the book a little bit, because I really like it. Sorry, ego massaging there, but actually not really. It's just a really nice thing. Nicely done presentation. Is there something in there that you really like, that you'd like to just highlight for us?
Absolutely. I think if there's one thing that I could have people take away, would be the skill of using sober. It comes from the mindfulness and kind of mindfulness-based intervention skills. But I found that in addition to working with drug and alcohol clients and folks in a couple of different industries, really it's just so helpful to stay present, and it really hits home with that weighing test. So sober, when I describe it in the book, and there's a little like worksheet you can do it through, but it really is just an acronym, and the first letter is stop. Is S for stop. And the reason that I love that being the first element is because I think that when we get into that autopilot mode, or when we get into that place where we're starting to have some frustration with ourselves, the first key element for us is to, once we notice it, is to stop doing what we're doing and take a moment. The S in sober is for observe. And I've had folks put in parentheses both inside and outside. And I think that it's really important for us to check in with, like, did whatever I'm feeling or doing or whatever have a prompt from outside of me, or is it coming from inside of me? And what am I feeling? Where am I at? What's going on here? Because I know that when I'm doing some of that mindless eating, there is very much a component of I'm in kind of a space where maybe I have time to kill, or maybe I'm just bored, or maybe I'm, just kind of rushing through something and I'm not really focusing on where I'm supposed to be. So observing those elements gives me some clues into where this could have come from or what I need to do next. The third one is B, so it's for breathe. And I have people put in parentheses, breathe 5 times. And that's not for any like really good scientific reason. It's more about like the 5 anyway, it's more about the next step also has 5. So if we can go in, like, we do things in 5s, it makes people remember things better. But I tell people a lot that doing some sort of a breathing exercise, especially some sort of an active breathing exercise like box breathing or dragon breathing, really does help people take time between all of this information you just brought in about what's happening inside and outside of my body, before I get ready to like start analyzing and make a decision. So we don't want them impulsively just, oh, I've got to put these crackers away and like never look at them again and then start to feel shame. We want them to say like, oh, wait, this happened. Now let me take a few moments before I get ready to see what my next step is, before my next decision. E is for examine the options. And again, I have them come up with 5 options. The way I explain this to teens is to try and come up with 2 really extreme options, so your thumb and your pinky, and then 3 kind of in the middle options. So for instance, if a teenager is really mad at their mom, one of their extreme options could be, I could punch her in the face. Not a recommended one very often, but you could do it. It's a choice, right? Another extreme option might be, I could run away to the circus. Another really extreme option, totally optional, that happens. There are circuses that will take you in today, but let's look at some middle ones as well. These might be ones that are probably more accurate or what, not accurate, but ones you might be willing to do. So it might be, I could walk to my room and slam my door. I could call a friend and have them come pick me up so I can just get out of this environment. Or I could yell at my mom, right? Which is less extreme than punching her in the face, but more extreme than just going and slamming your door. And then as you look at those options, you're then going to decide which one you're going to do. And I encourage people always to have done some analysis of their values, because sometimes your values can help guide you in what your decisions might need to be, but also that weighing test can help you kind of figure those pieces out. So what kind of these things can I do with full intention, like being present, on purpose, and without judgment? If you can punch your mom in the face without any judgment, fully present, like good form and everything, and on purpose, you know what the outcome is going to be and you're going to take it. I mean, you could do it. Probably not your best, but you could, right? And the same thing goes for all of them, whether the decision's about, should I eat more cake, or should I put on my seatbelt, or should, I quit my job? Any of those things, you can make a better decision once you've stopped, observed things, taken some deep breaths, looked at your options, and made it intentionally.
Yeah, that's great. And it's the pause, that is so critical. And I know if for myself, I might be, from the office, to the car, I'll be racing. Why am I racing? I don't know why I'm racing. I'm in a hurry because why? Yeah, I don't pause and consider what my body is doing on autopilot. So but some wonderful tips there.
Some wonderful things. I mean, because also that things, because the pause it gives you long enough to move into reflection. We know that there's a half-second delay in instinctive, but that first couple of seconds is a reactionary, which then allows the dorsal prefrontal cortex and also the ventral lateral and the orbital frontal to sort of come in and create some reflective nature. And the breathing 5, there's actually some stuff on 6 breaths, which is interesting when talking about vagal tone and just the nature of that, because once you start getting beyond 6, you move up into a bit more, you hyperventilate, so you've got to be careful of that. So 5 is great, but the 5 number, just interesting there, is 5 is quite preferable as a group, because when it's an even number, when it's 6, there's a tendency to divide the groups, and then you get 2 groups of 3. So 5 is brilliant. 3 is not enough to make it interesting. 3 is sort of a power group. So 5, there's a few things that are running around in my head as that. So
you can use your hand,
and you can use your hand, which is absolutely true. So 5 has this handy nature to it, which is just instinctive. So I love that. I'm on with that one. I'm looking down because I've written it down and I'm going, beauty. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
We're probably winding ourselves up a bit now. We've been yabbering beautifully and so interesting. Is there something that we've missed, or would you like to just give us a little sort of a final comment before we wind up and let people get back to their whatever they're doing, they're cooking their cake or jogging? Yeah.
People can find me at drtarasanderson.com. I've got links to my book and to other interviews that I've done, as well as courses and things that I teach. And I'm totally open to questions and comments, so people can feel free to email me, and I'd be happy to share and help if I can.
Fantastic. And we'll have those links in the show notes as usual. Well, Dr. Tara Sanderson, thank you so much for being here on the Science of Psychotherapy podcast. It was great to have a chat with you.
Yes, thank you so much. And we'll keep in touch because wonderful work you're doing.
Please do. And thank you so much for having me.